Hey everybody, Amber Carnes from Body Positive Yoga here, and I'm here today with Virgie Tovar. And Virgie, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her before we get started. So Virgie is an author, an activist, and one of the nation's leading experts on fat discrimination and body image. And she's the editor of Hot and Heavy, Fierce Fat Girls on Life, Love, and Fashion, which is an awesome book that we'll talk about. And she's also the mastermind between the hashtag Lose Hate Not Weight. She has a master's degree in human sexuality with a focus on the intersections of body size, race, and gender. And she writes and speaks internationally and just does awesome activist work around fat and body image. And welcome, Virgie. We're so excited to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you.
So we wanted to talk to you a little bit about the work that you do, and you're the editor of Hot and Heavy, Fierce Fat Girls on Life, Love, and Fashion. I have my copy right here, which is a book that I really love, and if you haven't read it, I recommend you run out and get it right now. I want to hang out with just like every single person who wrote a piece for this book. It's so awesome. So tell us a little bit about the book, maybe your favorite story or personal experience or something awesome that's happened since it's been out, and how folks reacted to it.
Yeah, so the book it's kind of a long story, right? So I became really interested in writing about the issue of being fat. I don't know, a few years before Hot and Heavy came out, I actually proposed, like I said in a book proposal, for a book called Fatties of the World Unite, which was going to be like a single author, like total rant manifesto with my current publisher. And at the time, they just felt like there wasn't enough interest in the topic, and this was like 2007, I think, so just a couple of years before. No, wait, no, you know what, it was about 2008, I think. So this was like right before the really big online explosion of interest
Yeah.
in the fashionista, and blogs around this issue. So if you can, I always tell people that, and I'm like, can you imagine, that just a couple years before, not even a couple of years before this explosion happened, publishers were thinking there's just no interest in this topic at all. So after that, after the rejection, I was rejected, but I got this like word of advice from the acquisitions person at Seal, and she was like, "Listen, the marketing people say no, but you're a great writer, so you should just keep going and think about resubmitting maybe something like this in the future." So I took that to heart. It was like that Dumb and Dumber moment when the rejection was there, but I'm like, so you're saying there's a chance? So I was like, I totally was like, I didn't even hear it as a no. I heard it as a, oh, it's going to happen someday, And I just had so much faith in the topic just generally, because that proposal, Fatties of the World Unite, came right out of a blog post that I'd made for someone, for a guest blog for somebody, maybe a few months before, and the reception to it was just incredible. Like, people were like, I want to tattoo parts of this to my body. It was just really like, the first time some of the people who had ever read it had ever heard of anybody talking explicitly about what it's like to be a fat girl in a fat hating culture.
Yeah.
So anyway, the book doesn't happen. I go to graduate school. I start researching women, and I'm doing biographical interviews, asking women about their lives, like their experiences of sexuality and gender and all kinds of other things. And I just start going down kind of this like magical fat activist like rabbit hole. As I'm doing the research, people are finding out about it. People are like, have you heard of this person? Have you met this person? Have you gone to this conference? And all of a sudden I'm like completely immersed in this world of like super fierce women who are taking diet culture head on and just deciding to say, like, I'm going to take a chance on loving myself, and I don't care what happens. Like, I mean, I'm just like living this life of hating myself and perpetually dieting just doesn't work for me. And so these brave, amazing women were people I was meeting and befriending, and in just talking to them, they would tell me their life story. They would tell me like how they got to this point, because I wanted to know, because I wanted to know how to do it myself. And the more women I met, the more I realized that this project that had originally been like a manifesto just written by me actually needed to be an anthology. And so it ended up being 31 women writing about this topic. And I think the reason why it really needed to be an anthology was because I feel like, even though I think that, individual author works are really important. With a topic like this, it's so easy for a woman to read it and think, oh, this is just one person. They're
Yeah.
just somehow magical or special. Like something weird happened to them. And I can't be that person because I don't have that like magical unicorn gene that this person
Right.
does. And I feel like when you see 31 women from all these different backgrounds, all these different ages, all the different experiences, it's very hard to debate that this is something you can do too.
Yeah.
So I felt like the anthology form was so appropriate and so perfect. And so the collection came together pretty easily. You know, I asked a bunch of people who I'd met through, you know, going down that magical rabbit hole. I asked all of them to submit, and almost all of them did. And so I wouldn't say that I have, you know, a favorite story, but I will say that it was very clear to me from the very beginning of the project, the story that I wanted to go first. And the first chapter of the book is called Shiny Sparkly Things, which is written by the Seattle-based burlesque performer Erin Kilpatrick, also known as Cherry Tart. And I remember that we were at a conference together and we were sitting poolside and she was like putting sunscreen on her body and we were both wearing bathing suits, and she told me the story of how she learned to love her body, and it was so powerful. And I'm just going to give you like a really short version of it, but it was essentially that she got into an extraordinarily violent car crash, and you know, there were no airbags. It was an older car and she got, I think, helicoptered out of it. And you know, as she's in the emergency room kind of covered in, you know, like lacerations and all kinds of other things that you experience when you're in a car crash, the doctor ends up telling her the only reason that she's alive is because her belly saved her life. So like her fat literally saved her life. And that like just blew my mind. Like when I heard that story, she was like, well, I mean, how can you hate a body that saved your life like that?
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, it was just so poignant, and it just gives me chills every time I tell her story. But it was very clear to me that that was going to need to be the first chapter in the book, because I think it completely reframes the idea of the fat body. Because I mean, we're so thoroughly convinced and so taught that fatness is something that endangers our lives, you know, emotionally and physically, especially, and quote unquote health wise.
Right.
And I think that these stories of the way that fat saves lives and the way that it, you know, the way that it creates potential. No, I mean, and when I say save lives, I mean with Erin, it was a technical thing, but I think that it has the potential to create beautiful connections between other people, and it has all this incredible meaning that shouldn't be pathologized and like gotten rid of by any means necessary, but that we should celebrate and kind of see as like this emblem of body diversity and as part of our story as fat people.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I love the book. It was really moving for me, and I found myself you know, shattered and like hilariously uplifted. I mean, there's definitely the whole range of experiences there, and I could identify with lots of it. So really, if you haven't read the book, please go out and get it. It will change your perspective on some things for sure. So thank you for putting that out into the world. We really need it. Tell us about Lose Hate Not Weight. So that's hashtag Lose Hate Not Weight. Why was this a thing that needed to happen? And is it more than a hashtag? How have people been using it? What kind of contributions have they made? What kind of project is it?
Well, so, you know, it was kind of like the way that it came out, the way that it like originated, its birth story, I guess, is like, it was like a comical kind of like movie moment. Like literally one day I shot out of bed, like literally just like boom, like kind of just springboarded. It was like, right, like I just pop out of bed and it's in my head. Like the minute I wake up, I'm like, lose hate, not weight. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. This is like my entire career. Like, it's done, you know? So I mean, I think it like completely summarizes my philosophy, and it completely summarizes, you know, how I approach the work and how I think the work needs to be kind of looked at, in my opinion. And when I say the work, I mean the work of eradicating diet culture, which is what I'm about, which is like my life is dedicated to that. And like, I'm going to be doing that work till the day that I die. Like I'm committed to that. I think that like, I think what's so powerful about it is, and the reason why I think people resonate so much with it is that it really focuses on something that's super important. so let me back up and say there's a myth that diet culture teaches us that that once we lose weight, that we can do all the things that we've always wanted to do.
Yep.
That when we lose 20 or 30 or 100, whatever, how many pounds, we can wear that lipstick. When we lose that weight, we can wear that short skirt. We can go on the date. We can go travel. We can start our lives
Hmm.
essentially, but only after we lose this weight. And I think that what people don't realize is that this is not some innocuous marketing idea. This is a life altering philosophy
Yep.
that many people are living their lives by. And unfortunately, like tons and tons of women who I work with and meet are living their lives in that way. And what people don't maybe realize that that is a philosophy that's completely based in self-hatred. Like that is a tool of like to be able to believe that you don't deserve to live a life that you want on your terms until you have met some kind of arbitrary cultural standard.
Yeah.
You have to believe that you're not good enough to have it right now. And so and it's very clear to me. A lot of people think that it's really extreme to call that self-hatred or to call it hatred, but I don't think it's extreme. I think self-hatred is on a spectrum. It's not just women who are, very clearly and very specifically harming themselves
Right.
in a way that we understand, like through eating disorders or through cutting or any kind of, thing that is actually physically harmful to someone and endangers their lives. There's another end of the spectrum too, which is just like, that moment, that little voice inside your head that tells you you don't deserve this, you're not good enough, you don't get to have this now, not yet. And so Lose Hate Not Wait is really about this idea that day, like there is no amount of weight loss that will eradicate that mindset. If you want to get rid of that mindset, you've got to get off the treadmill and get into your head
Hmm.
and start eradicating that mindset. And so I think that, that's what it's really about. Like, because I think the other part of the myth, the corollary of that myth, is that once that weight is lost, that you will it's like the heavens will open up and a ray of like beautiful sunlight will come in and you will immediately know that that is the weight. This is the body size that I've been waiting for all
Hmm.
my life, and all my problems are gone. All that self-hatred, all that self-doubt, it just disappears.
Because skinny
Because I
people
lost
don't have any problems or bad self-esteem, right?
Totally, totally. And I think what I've heard so many times and read about so many times, again and again and again and again, from people who have lost that weight through fairly extreme measures, like some people doing weight loss surgery, et cetera, like, really intense emotional and physical journeys. What they find at the end of it is that the weight loss doesn't change the mentality, it doesn't make it go away. And so Lose Hate Not Wait is really about focusing on that only the eradication of the mentality will get rid of the mentality. Weight loss will not lead to the loss of that mentality. And so in terms of the ways that people have been using it, I think like, it's been getting, a fair amount of traction. I think people use it when they do selfies, when they, kind of have quotes or something that they feel are related to this issue. And I think people resonate with it because they very much see that the diet industry and diet culture in general, the engine of those things is self-hatred, and nothing that's based in self-hatred is actually good for us, is actually going to like make our lives any better. And so anyway, that's kind of like the long and short of it. Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you for that. Yeah, I really liked what you said about how there's kind of this spectrum of self-hate, right? And that diet culture, I think, has this really insidious way of telling us that we're not good enough, which is kind of sneaky, right? It's not overt, like you said, like purging or cutting or, some kinds of self-harm, but it's this, it's almost, an innate, like worldview that you have to buy into diet culture. And so shifting that, and I mean, there have been studies, I know Linda Bacon's work, a lot of hers, she talks about the actual health effects of social stigma that are around people that are in fat bodies and the way that they're treated and discriminated against. And so even that's maybe a different side of the Lose Hate Not Wait, is like the whole social stigma and the way that affects us.
Yes, I mean, just to go, like, I mean, I talk about this a lot because I'm not a health expert. I'm like I'm more of a social scientist. Like, I'm more interested in identity and social problems. But I think like Linda Bacon and others who talk about the ongoing physical effects of stress, the physical deterioration that comes with being discriminated against, that is far more compelling to me than all these arguments that are saying that like big bodies automatically are going to lead to these things. And when you look at what has been empirically associated with ongoing stress, you find things like diabetes, you find things like heart attack, you find things like shortened lives. And I
Yep.
feel like that's a much more compelling area to really interrogate than consistently trying to prove that fat bodies and fat people are killing ourselves, through having a body. And so yeah, I think that's absolutely right.
So I really love the New Year, New View campaign that you did around January 1st this year. Can you talk to us about that? What was maybe the catalyst for that project, and how did you see people reframing their New Year's resolutions, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so New Year, New View is totally like the baby cousin of Lose Hate Not Weight. It really is like it's about changing your viewpoint and your worldview. I so the real catalyst was actually my agent. We're working on a new book project, and she's like really intense about me having a campaign. Then she was like, just pick something you really love, just do something you're really passionate about. And New Year's was coming around, and I kind of know, for me, as somebody who is kind of a recovering dieter, I know how intensely triggering that time of year is for people. It's like this really creepy ritual, I think, that people feel like they have to engage in with this like resolution making thing. And at the top of almost everybody's resolution list in the US is weight loss. No matter what size they are, they feel like this is something that's inherently a good value, something that actually somehow contributes to society or their life in some major way, that they have to put it first on their list, which is like just incredible to me, right? So I really wanted to encourage people to, and I wanted to do a play on like the kind of like there's a lot of that New Year, New You, which very much is essentially about changing your body, about changing, and specifically about losing weight. And that's like a very particular, like a very common catchphrase as New Year's is coming around. I've heard it for years and years and years and years and years. And so I thought I want to do a play on that and really focus on the idea that it doesn't need to be a new you. There just needs to be a new view on how you see yourself and how you see your role like in your own life, and your ability to kind of take charge of your own life, like to literally take your life back from diet culture. It's like, girl, that's my life, you don't get to have it anymore. um, and so it was really great watching. I asked a few people, and a few people did it independently, to talk about what they wanted to do in 2015 to celebrate their body, what rituals they wanted to start, taking on as self-care rituals, rather than like, instead of getting on the scale, instead of getting on the treadmill or whatever, like what kind of self-care and self-celebratory rituals did they want to incorporate into 2015? And so it was just great, like seeing people take back that rhetoric of the New Year's resolution, which is so often, as I mentioned, mired in this like self-help, whatever ideology, this idea that like the purpose of every new year is to change you entirely or something. Especially if you're a fat person, there's kind of this belief like, and I remember for me, January 1st represented the possibility of like completely getting rid of my body. And that's kind of what the New Year, New You rhetoric is really about. Like it's about this idea that like this year, this is the year that you can become not you. You can become like a
Yeah.
totally different
Wow.
person. You could look different. Your life can be different. And I think that I really want people to focus on the idea again that like their body isn't the problem. It's the rhetoric, it's the culture. Like it's not them. And how can we focus on things that like really make every single day feel like a celebration of ourselves? Like my little New Year, New View was kind of really spending more time recognizing my beauty, like really just kind of looking in the mirror, and or not, like doing whatever and just kind of having a moment in my day when I recognize like how beautiful I am, and how that beauty is something that is physical certainly, but is also deeper. That I have inherent worth as a human being on this planet, and that other people do too, and that there's no weight limit on humanity. So yeah, I think like people really liked the campaign, and a lot of people contributed, and I loved what they had to say.
That's amazing. Um, one of the ways that a lot of us have found a new appreciation for our bodies or a way to reconnect after years of abuse or dieting or just general body hate is through joyful movement. And for me, obviously, yoga was a big part. Has movement played a part in your self-acceptance walk? And if so, like what are you into movement-wise?
Yeah, I really love talking about this topic. One of the things I just did this 30-day online intensive called Babe Camp, and one of my favorite days we focused on movement. And the lesson for that day was that exercise is just another word, is a marketing word for movement, and diet is a marketing word for food.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most insidious things about diet culture is that diet culture takes these two things, movement and food, which humans have had a relationship to from the beginning of time, and they take it and they use it against us. And so, to be completely honest, I remember when I first came into body liberation politics and decided that I didn't want to diet anymore, it was very, very, very triggering for me even to go for a walk because literally my mind would automatically go into that mentality of like how many calories am I, how fast should I be doing, am I sweating, it automatically started like that calorie counter that's in our brains,
Yeah.
right, like that we literally have to like force out with a screwdriver or whatever, or our politics, but like it sort of, I mean, it was very triggering for me for a long time to even just start doing anything. Like I said, like even going for a walk around the block just really set me off. And it took, I want to say like at least a year, probably closer to 2 years, um, to start remembering that there is inherent joy in movement, and that it is not outcomes based, and that like as a hedonist, that movement could be part of my like pleasure seeking identity, right?
Right.
And like now, I live really close to the beach, I live really close to the Pacific Ocean, and I live really close to Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. And there's just nothing. I mean, like today, right before I talked to you, I went for a long walk. I went to the park and I saw the trees and just laying in the grass. It is such an important part of my mental health. It is such an important part of just feeling the pleasure of like sun
Mm.
on my face. And like lately I love crop tops, like feeling wind on my belly, like, and breathing in that air. Like I had a little headache this morning and I knew I could just go outside, go for like a 15-minute walk, and it would just either dissipate or it would go away completely. And I just know that like being outside and having that experience of movement, especially for me, out like the outdoors plays a big part in that.
Mm.
And so like I think too, as I don't have like a specific consistent ritual around movement besides kind of like going out, being around the ocean, being in nature. Those are really important things to me and they're very pleasurable things for me. Um, so I think that, yeah, like certainly movement has played a part, and like certainly it's played a part of like I said, my hedonistic kind of tendencies. I was going to tell you something else that I find really intense about um the way that diet culture like oh, okay, I have a story. So it's kind of like it's like a perfect touchstone story of like how messed up like diet culture and the exercise industry are. So the other day, like about a week and a half ago, it was a beautiful day. It was Sunday, and my boyfriend and I had gotten up, and I was like, I know, I want to go for a walk on the cliffs, and the cliffs are like a mile from here, so not very far. And I got in my car and I started to drive, and the road was blocked because there was a competitive athletic event. And I was like, well, isn't this ironic? I was like, it's so funny how I literally want to go for a walk, go for a hike, enjoy my morning, get some physical activity, which is allegedly what diet culture is about, right? For free. And I can't do it because there's a bunch of people paying to competitively exercise. Like, isn't this just funny? Like, this is the epitome of my problem with all this shit. I was like so angry. I was like, I can't. I was driving on for like 40 minutes. I was like, oh no, oh no. I was like, these fat phobes are not ruining my day. But I could not get across the park to get to the cliffs. It just blew my mind, right? But I was like, this is exactly like, and so that is the story that I feel summarizes the problems with like, the way that movement is co-opted and turned into something that people are like engaging capitalism with. I'm like, no, like movement is free. Movement is something that human beings have always done. Movement is something that has been inherently pleasurable to humans from the beginning of time. And if anybody expects you to pay for that, or some like expects you to attach an outcome to that, you need to start like worrying about their like their intentions, I guess is what I'm saying. So yes, I mean, essentially I'm working on reclaiming it further and just kind of being comfortable in public spaces as a fat bodied person, which is complicated. And I think and there's a chapter in the book about it. There's a couple talking about being fat at the gym and whatever. I don't go to the gym. I feel like I'm really lucky to be sort of surrounded by a landscape where I can just go and walk around it. And I know not everybody has access to that, but I think like the gym and yoga studios, et cetera, like very fraught environments. And I know that you've talked about that.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely, yoga studios are definitely a very fraught place for a lot of fat bodies. And I know it's definitely, I had that experience as a fat yoga student, and I've had that experience in my teacher training as being the only fat person. And, I continue to have it as a student, and also, so I try to mitigate that a little bit by just showing up, So I think like the more of us that are willing to be a little bit brave and maybe be seen and be visible, which I know visibility is like such a huge thing for a lot of us. I think that we make it easier for like the fatties of the future. So hopefully, we're doing that. One other question about movement. I know you had talked about the sort of soundtrack of diet culture that was playing in your head, when you first started doing movement as somebody who was pursuing, a different worldview. How did you learn to like turn that off or silence it, or is it just something that kind of happened over time as your knowledge and politics grew around fat and body image and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think it was kind of an organic process, in the way that like, and I mean, I really want to stress to people, just how important that process is. Like, and I think that it requires like a leap of faith. It requires patience and being gentle with ourselves. But like the longer I'm involved in politics that are centered in love, like in every regard, the more I realize that it's that slowing down. It's the recognition of how long it actually takes to deprogram, to heal, right? Like, I mean, and I feel like, like I use the analogy of like a relationship. Like if you're in a relationship, whether it's great or not, and you're in it for 10 years or 20 years, imagine how long it takes to recover from that, how long it takes to heal heartbreak. And I feel like, we are having, a lot of people are having a very intense LTR with diet culture.
Yeah.
And, imagine if you've started getting this messaging, since you were 4 or 5, even before then. It's pretty clear from research that children by the age of 5 very much understand fat phobia and have internalized fat phobia. So let's just say, 4 or 5, you've been in a LTR with somebody since you were 4 or 5. Now you need to give yourself a minute to sort of recover from that and heal from that. And it's like, and I sort of feel like time heals all wounds, right? So I think for me, it was an organic process in the sense that, the longer I've been involved in like ending diet culture and anti-fat phobia work, the more distance that I've gotten from how sinister that system is. And like, when you get that distance, there's perspective that really comes with that.
That's right.
And I think that, it just all stops making sense, if that makes any sense. And once a system that you've bought into, just imagine like being in a cult or whatever, like, and you're bond to that mentality, and like it takes a minute to get out of it. But like I think that the further you get from it, the more it just starts sounding like ridiculous ass shit. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that I believed that for so long. And so I think that with that recognition and with that distance comes recognition. So for me, it was just being in that process and being committed, just saying like, you know what, I from this day forward, like from now on, I'm voting on me, and anybody and anything that tells me to vote against myself, it's got to go. And so I think like the more you recognize that you deserve that we deserve to bet on ourselves, and that we as women and people are taught to bet against ourselves, and that's not cool. the longer we recognize that, the more we believe that, the more likely we are to just kind of let go of those things that don't serve us.
Yeah, for sure. So as an activist, you do a lot of work around fat discrimination, intersectionality, which is kind of a pretty powerful place to be. But if you could get one thing accomplished in your life work as an activist, what would it be, and why is it so crucial?
Oh man, I'm like, I've got the whole hog in mind, girl. Like,
Okay.
I'm eradicating diet culture. The
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
That's my goal. So it's like, I know that's huge. Like that means a lot. And that's like diet culture is a very, very big, very, very powerful entity. And I think that I use the phrase diet culture, and not just dieting, because a culture is sophisticated. A culture
Yeah.
is nuanced. A culture is bigger than us. And I think the most important thing about diet culture is that it is very difficult to opt out of it, even if you want to. And we're talking about like a sophisticated living entity. That is what diet culture is. And the touchstone of that for me is like, I just did a lecture yesterday. I do lectures all the time, and I like ask people, I say, can you imagine going one single day in your life without either hearing or having a thought about calories, about consumption, about guilt and shame around food, around worrying about going to the gym? And most of the time nobody raises their hand because no one can imagine this life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was put on this earth, it's very clear to me, to end that paradigm.
Well, we are encouraged that you're doing that, and I absolutely believe that you and the army of fierce fatties who are behind you and with you. I hope that we do it in our lifetime. I have hope. I mean, I think just you were talking about how since 2008, even when you pitched the book first, there's been such an explosion of culture around the sort of the anti-diet culture and health at every size, and so much awesome like visibility and imagery, and just I think hope for people who are sick to death of it and just ready to not be so miserable all the time. And that misery not being caused by our weight or our bodies necessarily, but being caused by the pressure on us and the constant messaging that we're not good enough and like we've just had enough. So we're glad to have you at the helm of getting rid of that. So tell us what do you have coming up that you're excited about or that other folks can get involved in, and where can people find you online and all that stuff?
Yeah, so my website is like the best way to kind of figure out, to keep in touch and to keep up with what I'm doing. It's virgietovar.com, VIRGIETOVAR.com. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter as at virgietovar. So coming up, so 2015, I'm going to do another Babe Camp. For those who have never heard of Babe Camp, I did it recently. It ended in December. It was a 30-day program that's really dedicated to owning your destiny as a mega babe and changing your relationship to food and your body. Super powerful. About 50 women signed up all over the world, and I just loved it. So 2015 is going to happen again. It looks like from my scheduling, it's going to be after June. But look for announcements and whatnot. You can also sign up for my email list, which I think is a really great way to find out if you're interested in being part of Babe Camp again. Definitely sign up on my email list. I have like the project that is taking up a lot of my emotional energy right now is I just got a grant from the San Francisco Arts Commission to write a new book, and it's a pretty radical departure. It's kind of an experimental work. I'm like a humorous memoirist. It's kind of like how I identify my voice and tone and writing. This is like a fiction, a work of fiction. It is a kind of it's a serious book. Like it's about the body. It's about assimilation. So it's really it's very much in that intersectional space that I often operate within. And I'm going to be traveling to Mexico, like where my grandparents are from, to do research on to just kind of be immersed in the culture and to learn more about kind of where they came from. And so yeah, I'm just doing a lot of thinking and research on this book because it's such an important part of where I am right now. And so anyway, like and the good news, the fun news, my favorite part of the project is that the grant allowed me to make the work available for free.
Mm.
So I'm going to be publishing it online as a serial. So I'm going to be releasing a chapter either once every month or once every 2 weeks, and it's going to be heavily annotated. So along with the chapter, you're going to see pictures of what I'm doing in my life at that time. I'm going to be writing about like my process, like, what's happening, what got edited out, how I felt about writing that thing, how I came to write that particular part of the story. So I'm really excited because it's going to be this like very interactive process. I'm really looking forward to people's feedback on it. And so I'm going to be in Mexico in May, and we'll be writing most of it either there or when I come back. So I'm hoping to release the first chapter, pretty soon, but at the very latest in the summer. And again, if you go to my website, you'll learn more about that. But like those are the things kind of that I'm most excited about that are on the horizon.
That is really exciting, and I think just the format. First of all, congratulations on the grant. That's amazing, and also that format just sounds really cool. As somebody who's like addicted to reading and books, I've always been interested in the ways that publishing has changed with the advent of all this new technology, and that just sounds like an amazing experience. Like I'm really looking forward to reading it and seeing how that unfolds. So very cool. All right, so what is your parting piece of body positive advice for anybody watching this video?
I think that my parting advice, it's a little bit, it kind of reiterates something I was mentioning earlier, but I think just really allowing ourselves the space and the time to heal from diet culture and really giving, like, I really want people to like take the space that they need and like and take a moment to create some distance between themselves and like this really intense culture that we're a part of. I find it really, really empowering to read about how other people process this experience, and you can do that through blogs, you can do that through Instagram or any number of social media outlets, you can do it through books. It's so important to be able to see how other people are doing this process. So, I mean, again, I'm like a thinker. I'm like deep in my head, and I'm somebody who is very, very empowered by language and very, very informed by how other people do things. So like I'm very sort of process oriented. So like, if you're somebody who's like that, it's really helpful to expose yourself to other people's experiences. And I think in general, the bonus piece of information would be that we really need to focus on the fact that we deserve to be surrounded by people who see us and who support us in becoming, you know, in becoming like more in our bodies and becoming more focused on self-love. And there was a lecture I went to a few years ago, and I never forgot, it was by Erica Huggins, who's a former Black Panther Party member. And somebody asked her for her advice for women's empowerment. She was like, what would you say to women? And she said, fire anybody who's not on your team. And I just like, oh, that just blew my mind. Like, and essentially she's talking about community, and she's talking about the fact that we deserve to be around people who see us, and we deserve to not be around people who don't. And I think that those are like the two kind of things that I would leave people to think about.
Yeah, I love the advice you gave about kind of seeking out other people's stories and their sort of walk to self-acceptance, because I think, there's so much great stuff on the internet, and now especially with books coming out and everything else about how people that I guess we can sort of look at and say, well, they've made it, right? Like people might look at you or at me or different people that have quit dieting and that have made peace with their bodies or whatever and say like, well, that is so far from what I can relate to. Like, I can't imagine being able to say, like, I'm okay with myself or my size or my shape or whatever. That I think the processes that you're talking about, just seeking out, like, other voices and other stories about how people did that and what it felt like to go through that and how to sort of deprogram and unlearn all the stuff that we've been programmed with by society. that, yeah, it is important, and it can be really, it can make us feel like we're not alone, because we're definitely not. This is not a unique experience, so.
Totally. And I mean, I think that you're getting to something that's really important, which is like, you cannot skip the process. Like there's like the only way to it is through it. I always say that. And it's like, just own that. Just recognize that you deserve that time. The time that it takes for you to heal, that's the time it takes to heal. Like, and you deserve that time.
Yeah. And like you said, it can be a pretty messy breakup after a lifetime relationship with diet culture. So, okay. Thank you so much for being with us today, Virgie. I so appreciate your time, and the work you're doing is so important, and we all owe you a debt of gratitude. So thank you for being here and talking with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, well, you can find out more about Virgie in the blog post that will accompany this video, and I'll have links to all her sites and to Babe Camp and everything else. So check out the blog at bodypositiveyoga.com to learn more. And thanks for joining us today. Bye.